It started with one photo, a massive manta ray hanging from a crane on a Florida dock. Within hours, it was everywhere. Divers, anglers, lawmakers, everyone was asking the same thing. How was this legal? The image looked like a crime scene against nature, but the truth was stranger than that. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, or FWC, had actually signed off on it. They said it was part of a research project, fully permitted under state law. But for millions of Floridians who care about the ocean, that explanation didn't sit right. A protected species, caught, handled, and photographed out of the water, all within the rules. So, what really happened here? Why did this single catch ignite a storm of outrage across Florida's coastlines? And what does it say about how far the FWC's authority should go? Let's break it down. To understand why this one event set Florida off, you first have to know what the FWC actually does. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission is the agency in charge of managing everything from fishing seasons to endangered species. They set the rules, issue permits, and decide who can take what out of Florida's waters. And in this case, that decision involved one of the ocean's most protected creatures, the giant manta ray. Under normal circumstances, catching or handling a manta in Florida is completely illegal. They're listed as threatened under federal law and protected by state regulations. But there's one exception, something called a Special Activity License, or SAL. These permits allow researchers to temporarily capture and tag certain species for scientific study. That's the loophole that made this catch legal. The FWC granted a group of scientists permission to capture a manta ray for data collection. But when the photos hit social media, no one saw research. They saw a massive, helpless animal hoisted into the air, and a government agency defending it. Suddenly, what should have been a quiet scientific operation turned into a statewide scandal. The capture happened in early September, just off Florida's Atlantic coast. A licensed research team, working under an approved FWC permit, had set out to locate manta rays for tagging, part of an ongoing study tracking migration and reproductive health. These scientists had done it before, dozens of times. But this time, things didn't go the way they expected. The crew managed to corral an enormous manta, nearly 15 feet across, and secured it alongside their vessel using soft ropes. The animal was alive, conscious, and, according to the team, handled safely. But during the process, someone snapped photos of the manta being lifted from the water with a crane for measurement and tagging. Those photos, once posted online, instantly blew up. To the public, it didn't look like research. It looked like a trophy shot. The manta's size and the way it was displayed made it seem like it had been caught for sport, or worse, killed. Within hours, conservation pages, fishing forums, and Florida Reddit threads exploded with accusations. People were calling the scientists poachers, tagging FWC demanding answers, and using words like barbaric and corrupt. It didn't help that the FWC initially stayed quiet, offering no immediate clarification. The silence made it look like they were hiding something, and that fueled even more anger. What started as a science project quickly spiraled into one of Florida's most heated wildlife controversies in years. Within a day, the photos had reached every corner of Florida's fishing and diving communities. Charter captains were furious. Ocean conservation groups were demanding investigations, and local Facebook groups were flooded with comments accusing the FWC of hypocrisy. "If this is legal, what isn't?" one post read. Hashtags like #SaveTheMantas and #FWCFail started trending across platforms. Even state lawmakers, both Democrats and Republicans, jumped in, calling the catch tone deaf and deeply disturbing. Environmental activists said it symbolized a broken system, where government agencies protect paperwork more than wildlife. Meanwhile, regular anglers were just confused. Most of them had spent years being told that touching or even approaching a manta ray was off limits. They saw one out of the water, and it shattered their trust in the rules. Some accused FWC of giving special privileges to insiders, saying if an average fisherman had done the same thing, they'd be fined or arrested. Dive shops across the Keys started putting up signs saying, "Protect, don't touch." Marine photographers posted side-by-side images of mantas thriving in the wild versus the one hanging limp from a crane. The public outrage wasn't just about one animal. It was about the feeling that the people enforcing Florida's laws were now the ones breaking them. After nearly 48 hours of silence, the FWC finally released a public statement. They confirmed that the manta ray capture was, in fact, legal under a special activity license granted for scientific research. According to the agency, the animal had been briefly restrained for tagging and biological sampling before being safely released back into the ocean. They emphasized that no harm was intended and that such captures are essential for understanding manta behavior and migration patterns. But their explanation did little to calm the storm. Critics accused the agency of hiding behind technicalities and poor communication. They pointed out that the FWC never clarified how long the manta had been out of the water or why it had to be lifted so dramatically in the first place. The statement didn't include any footage of the animal swimming away, which made skeptics even louder. Some experts defended the agency, saying tagging programs are critical for conservation and that public outrage often misses the nuance of fieldwork. Still, for many Floridians, the issue wasn't science, it was trust. The FWC's tone came off cold and bureaucratic, more like damage control than accountability. Instead of ending the conversation, their response added fuel to it. People wanted transparency, not a legal citation. They wanted to see compassion for the animal, not just a defense of the paperwork. Marine biologists across Florida stepped in to explain what might have actually happened beneath the outrage. They said the manta ray wasn't targeted for sport or profit. It was likely part of a long-term research project studying how these animals move through Florida's coastal waters. Mantas are filter feeders, harmless to humans, and incredibly intelligent. But because they migrate thousands of miles and give birth to very few offspring, they're vulnerable to extinction. Tagging them helps scientists learn where they breed, feed, and how fishing or pollution affects their routes. Researchers argued that without temporary captures, we'd know far less about how to protect them. Still, even scientists admitted that optics matter. One marine ecologist said, "You can do everything right in the field and still look wrong online." The problem wasn't necessarily the research, it was how it was presented. The moment a crane lifted that manta into the air, it stopped looking like science and started looking like exploitation. The experts agreed that if the goal is public trust and conservation, then research needs to be transparent and sensitive to how people perceive what they see. As the story spread beyond the fishing world, it turned into something bigger, a full-blown debate about ethics, politics, and power. Lawmakers began calling for a review of how the FWC grants its special activity licenses. Environmental coalitions demanded public oversight, arguing that science shouldn't be used as a shield for questionable practices. And for many coastal residents, this became a symbol of something deeper. A feeling that Florida's environmental agencies were no longer listening to the people they're supposed to serve. The FWC insisted it followed procedure, but critics said that was the problem. The procedures themselves were outdated and lacked transparency. Why were these permits so secretive? Who decides what's truly necessary for research? Some even accused the agency of cozy ties with university projects that rely on FWC's approval for funding, raising questions about conflicts of interest. The scandal grew until it reached the state capitol, with legislators promising hearings to restore public confidence. But the argument wasn't just legal, it was emotional. To many Floridians, a manta ray isn't just a data point. It's a symbol of the ocean's grace, something that deserves reverence, not bureaucracy. The manta became a flashpoint for how far science should go, and whether the public still has a say in what conservation really means. Down at the docks, the reaction was raw and personal. Fishermen who spent decades on Florida's waters said they'd never seen anything like it. One charter captain in Clearwater told a reporter, "If any of us caught that manta, even by accident, we'd be fined into the ground." But the FWC can do it and call it science? That frustration echoed across marinas and bait shops statewide. To everyday anglers, the issue wasn't about marine biology. It was about fairness. They follow strict bag limits, seasonal closures, and no-touch rules, only to watch the regulators themselves break what looks like their own code. Some older captains said it reminded them of other times the FWC moved the goalposts, like sudden snapper closures or gear bans that blindsided the community. The trust gap between fishers and the agency widened with every comment thread and every unanswered question. Even among people who support conservation, the sentiment was the same. Florida's fishing community wants transparency, not just rules. They want to know that the people writing the laws care about the same ocean they do. Because when that trust breaks, it doesn't just hurt the FWC's image, it hurts the cooperation that real conservation depends on.
At the heart of this entire scandal lies one simple truth. Perception can shape reality. The FWC may have followed the law, the scientists may have done their jobs, and the manta ray may have swum away unharmed. But to the people of Florida, the image of that massive creature dangling lifeless above the water told a different story. It looked like power without accountability. It looked like another moment where ordinary Floridians were left out of decisions that affect their coast. And that's what made it sting. This wasn't just about one ray. It was about who gets to decide what's acceptable in the name of science. Real conservation depends on both data and trust, and Florida's waters need both more than ever. Maybe this whole controversy can be a turning point. A reminder that protecting the ocean isn't only about what's legal on paper. It's about how we, as a community, choose to show respect for the life that calls it home.
So what do you think? Did the FWC make the right call by allowing this capture, or did they cross a line that should never be crossed? Drop your thoughts below, because this story isn't over. Florida's waters are full of moments where science, politics, and passion collide, and the people who fish here deserve to have a say in what happens next. If you want to keep up with the stories that actually affect your coast, the rules, the rights, and the real drama behind the headlines, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell. And if you thought this was wild, wait until you see our next deep dive. Florida fishermen are furious. The red snapper permit scandal.